This is the new 2022 Mercedes-Benz C300, and it's the latest version of the C-Class. It's been redesigned for the 2022 model year with upgrades to styling, performance, technology, and equipment, and today I'm going to review the new C-Class and show you everything. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era with free listings. You can list your cool car for free and auction it on Cars and Bids. And we've had some fantastic sales recently, including this Mercedes-AMG E63 S-Wagon sold for $108,000. This great Porsche Cayenne diesel sold for almost $38,000. We've done great with Cayennes. And this Audi TT brought $40,000. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it, with daily auctions and great selection at carsandbids.com. I've borrowed this new C-Class from Mercedes-Benz of Temecula, which is a Mercedes-Benz dealership here in Temecula, north of San Diego. Mercedes-Benz of Temecula is a fantastic dealership that has all of the latest Mercedes-Benz models, including the new C-Class, which has just started to arrive in dealers. Check out Mercedes-Benz of Temecula by clicking the link in the description below. So let's talk C-Class. This car first came out almost 30 years ago, and it's gone through a lot of changes since then. Back in the day, the C-Class was the entry-level Mercedes-Benz model, although now that role is filled with the CLA and also the A-Class. The new 2022 C-Class has been redesigned, and it starts around $45,000 with shipping, and today I'm going to review it. First, I'll take you on a thorough tour of the new C-Class and show you its quirks and features. Then I'll get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'll give it a Doug score. Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features, the new C-Class, with a look at this car on the outside, where you can clearly see that it's been updated, redesigned in fact, for the 2022 model year. That's especially true in front and in back. You can see the front end styling has been changed considerably now to match up with other Mercedes-Benz models that have this kind of new general Mercedes-Benz front end. Same deal in back. This new C-Class has a newly redesigned rear end and a new taillight shape that's intended to match up with other Mercedes-Benz models like the latest S-Class, as you can see here, and the new Mercedes CLA and others. So this new C-Class kind of joins the family look that has been applied to other Mercedes-Benz models, and now it's on the C-Class. As for interesting quirks on the outside of this car, one is definitely the taillight design. You can see when the taillights are on, it has a very distinctive, unique look, but even more so when the turn signals are on, they almost look like little orange wings kind of going out from the center of the car. And it's certainly an interesting and distinctive look, those taillights, and especially when the turn signals turn on. Now up front, you have an even quirkier quirk, and that would be the grille. You have the giant Mercedes-Benz logo in the middle, of course, but if you get closer, you can see all of the other Mercedes-Benz logos. The rest of the grille is made up of tiny Mercedes-Benz logos that you don't really notice unless you're looking for them. It's kind of stupid, but it's also kind of a neat little Mercedes-Benz quirk. But aside from those things, the taillights and the grille, and the updates to bring this into kind of the latest Mercedes-Benz design language, the new C-Class is fairly subtle. You can see it doesn't have like crazy scoops or inlets or really many risks on the outside. It's still a subtle, simple design, not meant to rock the boat. This car is a major bestseller globally, so Mercedes wanted to keep it subtle, and they did. It just looks sort of modernized. But anyway, next we move inside the new C-Class, and probably the most noticeable update for the redesigned 2022 model is the screens. Two massive screens in here, as you can see. There's a center screen about 12 inches and also a gauge cluster screen, so a little larger, 12.3 inches. Two big screens in this interior, which are standard on all new 2022 C-Class models. And frankly, they give this interior kind of an S-Class effect, Mercedes' flagship luxury sedan, the S-Class, because it has similar screens, as as you can see here, well, they've now trickled down into the C-Class, and you have sort of a similar design and look in this interior, which definitely makes this new 22 C-Class model feel more upscale and luxurious. But let's talk through the screens for a second, because they have some interesting quirks and features of their own. Like, for example, the center screen has a fingerprint reader. This little box at the base of the center screen, that's a fingerprint reader. And when you buy one of these, you can teach the car your fingerprint, and then every time you get inside after someone else drives your car, like your spouse, your friend, or whatever, instead of adjusting everything back to how you like it, just put your fingerprint on that box and everything goes back to your setting because it's tied to your fingerprint whenever you climb in the car. That is standard on the new C-Class and frankly pretty cool. And of course, there's some other great features in this center screen, like for example, a fantastic camera system. As you can see, high resolution, high quality, many angles, and you even have a 360 camera. You just swipe your finger around and you can see all around the car. Now, I've mentioned similar 360 cameras in a lot of vehicles, but this is one of the lesser expensive cars I've seen it in, kind of a sign that this technology is trickling down to more mainstream affordable cars. And by the way, one interesting thing about this camera system and the parking sensors with this car, it actually limits your speed if you're near something that you might hit. You can see right here, I'm about to hit an object, and so it says that my speed has been reduced so I don't bash into it at high speed, flooring the accelerator. Now, you can tap the screen, as you can see, to remove that limiter if you want to bash into something at high speed, but the car is using its sensors to kind of keep your speed limited, so if you do hit something, it's at a low speed, which is a cool idea. And next up, another interesting quirk of this center screen is a feature called automatic seat positioning. Check this out. You go into this screen and you input like your body dimensions, and then it will adjust the driver's seat to what it thinks the most comfortable, optimal seating positions should be. So you don't even have to adjust your own seat to get comfortable. The car will do that for you when you tell it your size, which is pretty crazy. But aside from those interesting quirks, this screen is really fantastic. This whole system, Mercedes' latest MBUX system, that's what they call it, it's great. It works really well, it's super intuitive, tremendously responsive, very easy to use, and I consider this to be one of the very best infotainment systems in the entire car industry, if not the single best. You also have these cool shortcut buttons on the main screen that you can use to go into various items more quickly, stuff that you use more commonly. I don't see that in many other cars' infotainment systems, and it's a cool feature here. Frankly, overall, MBUX is fantastic, although there are some interesting drawbacks worth pointing out. One, this car does not have a navigation system. It has a sticker price of over $50,000. Brand new Mercedes-Benz doesn't have nav. Now, frankly, this is a bit of a surprise to me, and frankly, I think it's pretty crazy. No navigation in a brand new C-Class, but I suspect most of the people who get one of these probably won't care. All new C-Class models come standard with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and it's easy to sync up a navigation app to your phone into your center screen, so you don't really need built-in navigation anymore, which is a good thing because this car doesn't have it. Now, another interesting drawback of this center screen, it does incorporate the climate controls. You can see the bottom portion of the screen is taken up by the climate controls. Typically, I prefer hard physical buttons for climate controls since you're adjusting them frequently and you don't want to look down at a screen to figure out where to do that. But one benefit here is they are always in the same place, fixed at the bottom of the screen, easily accessible, and so you get used to where they are. And frankly, I don't see that as really a big drawback. Now, one other thing worth pointing out with the center screen, at the base you can see a few controls, including where that fingerprint reader is. You also have a volume control here. You slide your finger back and forth along this little slider to increase or decrease stereo volume, and you also have a button marked dynamic. That one changes your drive modes. You can see you have a few different modes here, including Sport Plus. I highlight that one because it's only included in this C-Class because it's equipped with an optional AMG Sport package, which includes a few cosmetic touches on the outside and inside of the car, and also that extra Sport Plus drive mode only on C300 models with an AMG package. Now, the other important screen to point out in the new C-Class is, of course, the gauge cluster screen. Like I said, 12.3 inches standard and quite excellent. It's really high quality, high resolution, full color, of course, an excellent gauge cluster system. And I've talked in other Mercedes-Benz models about how this is my favorite gauge cluster technology in the car industry. Now, that's true, although it's worth pointing pointing out that this one isn't as configurable as some other Mercedes models because this car just doesn't have as many features. For instance, you can't get a full screen map in that gauge cluster display because this car doesn't have navigation. But you can still change the display in the center of this screen to show you various different pieces of information, as you can see, which is nice and useful. And you can configure this gauge screen to show different versions of itself. For example, this is the classic gauge screen, what you're seeing right now, pretty standard, but you can also change it to an understated gauge screen, which sort of has the same information, just more understated, a more simple kind of calming screen. You can also change it to a sports screen, as you can see here, which is just bizarre, maybe a little bit too sporty, frankly. It totally changes the look of the screen, but it's neat to be able to have those different options for displaying the gauge cluster however you want. But anyway, next up, aside from the screens, let's talk interior, because this entire cabin has been redesigned, and that is also very clear from the moment you get inside. Frankly, it's beautiful in here. The entire look of this interior is very nice, very luxurious, very high quality. The materials are nice, everything is laid out well. It's all very good and very luxury car in here. I especially like this sort of waterfall look dashboard that spills into the center console. Nice design, again, borrowed from the latest S-Class, so you have that sort of baby S-Class feel in here. And you also have this gorgeous gray wood trim, looks nice against the aluminum accents. It's just a really nice interior, especially for this price point. Now, another nice benefit of this interior is the steering wheel, which is borrowed from other high-end Mercedes-Benz models. Now, it's trickled down to the C-Class with several different spokes that have various controls on them. You can use to adjust the screens, your cruise control, all that sort of thing. And it's just a nice look and feel, this sort of golf ball texture on the side, leather wrapped, an attractive steering wheel to go along with this attractive interior. Same deal with the climate vents. You can see aluminum look, 3 in the center, all very high quality. Again, very luxury car in here. And it's also worth pointing out that the door panels have a very luxurious look to them as well. This is where a lot of automakers will cheap out in their interiors, but Mercedes-Benz really hasn't. You do have cheap plastic on the bottom, which doesn't look good, but you're not really seeing that part when the door is closed and you're sitting in the car. As you can see here, instead, you're seeing these upper controls, aluminum, leather, stitching, this nice stereo speaker. Everything looks really good on this door panel. No real cheapening out in here, and I'm impressed. And it's the same deal in this center console. When the lids are closed in the center console, you can see a very simple, very minimalist approach, including this kind of checkerboard trim pattern instead of piano black, which sometimes gets criticized for picking up fingerprints. So you got a checkerboard instead. But in the center console, you don't have anything sticking up, nothing protruding, just a simple look when the lids are closed. Now, when you open up this front lid with the checkerboard pattern, you can see that's where all this stuff is hidden. You have 2 cup holders in here. You have a USB-C port so you can plug in your device, and you also have a wireless charger. So you can access all that stuff for practicality or just close it for a nice, calm, luxurious look. Next up, a few drawbacks in this interior, or potential drawbacks anyway. Number 1, I still don't like the gear lever in this car. This gear selector just seems flimsy and plasticky and cheap, and I'm not really into it. I've complained about this in other Mercedes-Benz models, and I just don't think it's up to the quality and standard of the rest of this interior. Now, the other drawback is something I actually like, but I've heard some people don't, and that would be the sunroof control. To open the power sunroof in this car, you just swipe your finger on this pad, and then the sunroof opens. There's no button or switch that you pull or push. It's a pad swipe to open the sunroof, which is definitely an interesting thing. Some people prefer like physical buttons and switches, but I like this kind of neat futuristic sunroof control. And next up, the next important thing to discuss with the new C-Class is powertrains. This car is launching, first going on sale, with only one model available, and that would be this one, the C300, which uses a turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes 255 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Now, that's the same powertrain in the outgoing C300, and it has the same horsepower figure, although torque has been increased. The old C300, I think, had like 275 pound-feet. This one is 295, so it should be a little bit faster and more powerful. And you can see on the plastic engine cover for this engine, 4 lines to indicate 4 cylinders, because that's what everybody does to show how many cylinders they have. They just stick lines on the plastic engine cover representing that amount. It is very weird, but everyone does it. Now, this C300, this particular one, is rear-wheel drive, but all-wheel drive will be available as an option for around $2,000 extra if you want more all-weather security. security. And it's also worth pointing out this car is only offered with a 9-speed automatic transmission. Now, other C-Class models coming soon. For one, there will be the AMG C43, sort of the mid-performance version. That will also use a turbocharged 4-cylinder as opposed to a turbo V6 that the old model used, but Mercedes says it will have over 500 horsepower from a turbo 4-cylinder, which will be a power boost compared to the outgoing C43. The really crazy one is the C63, which will no longer use a V8, but instead a turbocharged 4-cylinder, apparently going to have over 600 horsepower. I'm not sure how they're going to pull that off, or if people are going to revolt that there's no more V8 in the C63, but that's the rumor, and it's coming soon. And next up, we move on to the back of the new C-Class, which I have to say is surprisingly large. Now, it certainly isn't huge back here, and tall adults will not want to be crammed back here forever, but there's a lot more space in this C-Class than in earlier models where it was really tiny. These cars have grown, and rear seat space has grown as well. And indeed, this new C-Class is 2.5 inches longer than the outgoing model, although only about 1 inch of that is in the wheelbase, sort of the interior of the car, but you do feel a little bit larger in here. One interesting thing is, although legroom and knee room is pretty good, headroom is actually the one that's compromised. If I sit up straight, my head is pushing up against the ceiling, which is kind of a surprise, usually not a problem in cars like this. But anyway, aside from rear seat room, other items worth pointing out back here. For one thing, very luxurious still in the back. You can see the seats, nice material, nice stitching, they look very good, and the top of the door panel has that same treatment from the front. You have this leather panel with nice stitching, aluminum trim, looks good, this nice speaker cover, it all looks good in the back seat, just as luxurious as what you have up front. Also luxurious back here is the climate vents. You can see, similar to the ones up front, aluminum, they feel nice and substantial as you move them around. Very attractive, very nice climate vents, but despite the fact that the materials are nice and luxurious back here, you do have a few interesting drawbacks. For one thing, you have climate vents, but no climate controls, which I guess is fine, especially at this price point. Not that surprising, but it would be nice. More surprising is the fact that you don't even have rear charge ports. I don't see any USB-C, USB-A, household anywhere. The center console, the rear armrest back here, no visible charge ports, which is certainly a drawback for a car like this. You really ought to have them. Now, it is worth pointing out you do have a rear center armrest, and it does have some functionality, obviously as an armrest, but it also has this little panel that pushes out in the front, and you can pop it open one step, and then you have this little storage compartment, I guess for a pen, or maybe to stick a smartphone in it while you're sitting back here. Now, if you press this a second time, then cup holders reveal themselves, so you can use it to store drinks, but you have sort of a 2-stage storage compartment in your rear center armrest. But anyway, next we move on to the trunk of the new C-Class, which interestingly enough is a power trunk. It opens automatically, and once it's open, you tap a little button and you can close it automatically. I find this surprising because this car doesn't have a navigation system or rear charge ports for devices, but it has a power trunk, kind of a weird mishmash of features, but that's what you got going on here. Anyway, open up the trunk and you can see it's decent sized, like you'd expect for a car like this. Nothing too unusual or surprising about the size, but it's worth pointing out you have a lot more storage under the trunk. You lift up this latch and you can see more storage down here for items if you don't want them rolling around in the full trunk, a little extra space. To me, probably the best thing about the trunk is that you can fold down the rear seats from the trunk. You have this little switch over on the side of the trunk, you pull on that and the seat drops down, as you can see, and you have another switch over on the other side, you pull that and again the seat drops down, and then you have a larger cargo area back here. This is especially notable because not every car in this segment and at this price point has this feature, but it adds convenience if you're trying to load in some larger items so you don't have to go around and unlatch the seats individually. And so that's the new 2022 Mercedes-Benz C-Class. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see how it drives. All right, driving the new C-Class. It's an interesting thing. You know, a lot of people have been saying, oh, this is the baby S-Class. That's kind of always said when a new C-Class comes out. But more and more, this car has been shedding its image of being the entry-level model in the Mercedes-Benz lineup. And more it has become nicer, more luxurious, more expensive, and offered more equipment. Because you have the CLA and the A-Class now kind of serving as that base entry-level lease payment type car. And the C-Class can kind of grow a bit and get a bit nicer. And that is what's happened here. On paper, it does have kind of a baby S-Class feel to it, especially in terms of styling and interior styling and design, and also the features that it has, the screens, some of the luxury tech, the nice equipment. You can kind of see sort of a baby S-Class vibe going on here. But when you're inside the car, you know, it's not. It doesn't have that quite feel to it for a couple reasons. One is power and performance. The S-Class, of course, is a big V8, and it feels it. It feels strong, it feels muscular and powerful in just about any situation. This car also feels pretty good, especially considering it's just a turbo 4-cylinder, but it's not quite on that level. 0 to 60 is in the high 5s for this car, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. The high 5s is a quick 0 to 60 time, but this one kind of lags a little bit. It's more merging and passing power, where you miss the bigger powertrain of a car like an S-Class or an E-Class, a V6 or a V8. With that said, this engine is still pretty good, especially for a 4-cylinder. It's responsive, it's nice, and more importantly, it's smooth. This and the transmission, very smooth powertrains. The accelerate feels good, nice and easy to gain power, just not quite on that kind of V8 level. The real difference, of course, is ride quality. The S-Class is a fantastically luxurious car, so comfortable and relaxed. This just isn't quite on that level. Now, it's important to point out, I've driven all the rivals to this car, 3 Series and A4 and anything else, Genesis, etc., Lexus. This car's ride quality is very much among the best. It is not incredibly, fantastically luxurious like an S-Class or like some real high-end luxury car, but it's very good. Impressively good, I would say, for a car in this segment at the $45,000 to $55,000 price point. Like I said, this one has a sticker price of $50,000. It rides nicely, and it feels smooth, and it feels luxurious. If I were to put a simple phrase on it, it rides like the Mercedes-Benz of these compact sedans, because it is. You know, Mercedes has a little bit less of a focus on sport and performance and more of a focus on ride and luxury, and that's what you feel here. You got good interior room in here. Everything is nice there. Visibility is nice, and of course you have some nice driver aids that help you with seeing well. Mercedes has this car down to a pretty good formula at this point. They've made, now this is I think the 5th generation of C-Class, and they've got it down. They know what their customers want, and each one just gets better and better and offers more and more stuff. The tech in this car is fantastic, definitely the best in this segment. Like I said, ride quality is best in this segment. This is just a very nice car. Frankly, I would say that this latest C-Class is class leading at the moment. I wouldn't call it the sportiest car, and I'm eager to see how the C43 and the C63 are when they come out in the next, 6 months, year, whatever. But if you just want sort of a nice, luxurious, relatively simple, easy, drivable Mercedes luxury car, and if you don't need the space of an E-Class or want to spend that money, this car is a great vehicle. It's not going to excite you. It's not going to knock your socks off. It's not that kind of car. It's got a relatively subtle, simple design, and it drives in a relatively staid manner. But it's nice. It's nice. It's luxurious. It's simple. It's easy. It's a great C-Class and a great sort of mid-entry level luxury car. And I think once again, Mercedes has a great vehicle here that's going to be very popular in this segment with people who want the Mercedes of these sedans. And so that's the new 2022 Mercedes-Benz C-Class. This car has some major improvements over the old one in terms of luxury and technology, and frankly, there's a lot to like about this new redesigned C-Class model. And now it's time to give the new C-Class a DOUGSCORE. And the DOUGSCORE is here, 55 out of 100, which places the C300 here against rivals. It loses out just slightly to the latest BMW 330i, although that's entirely because of the weekend score. The new 3 Series drives a little better, and it looks a little better too, as one of the last BMW models not to adopt the big BMW nostrils. The C300 is an impressive car, though, with nice technology, simple, subtle styling, and a luxurious driving experience. And if you're not looking for the added sport of the BMW, the Mercedes is probably the better choice for slightly more comfort and slightly better technology.